It would be pretty ignorant for any crewman aboard a United Earth Space Probe Agency starship to think that the universe is a warm and fuzzy place where everybody gets along just fine. Because it's not. The universe is a dangerous place. Be it extraterrestrial animals, or the powerful warriors of the Klingon Empire, or some other strange unknown out there between the stars. This is why all starships, starbases, and space stations carry phasers with them, which are directed energy weapons which fire concentrated bursts of rapid nadions. The designs of phasers widely vary between small ones that can be handheld or larger ones which are mounted to the exterior hulls of ships and space stations. In the case of landing parties which visit those strange new worlds, the handheld Type 2 phaser is really the best. Of course, it helps if your television series budget can afford the special effects, wire work, explosions, and stuntmen necessary to convey such an idea. We Trekkies are well known for loving our chronologies and intimate details into every single little facet of Star Trek. Needless to say, this stereotype is very much deserved. Fortunately, Diamond Select Toys caters to such high demands, and so they have released no less than 3 versions of the original series Type 2 phaser. The white handle phaser, the bronze handle phaser, and the black handle phaser that will be reviewed in this video. For landing parties that require a little more subtlety and discretion on their missions, the Type 1 handheld phaser is best suited for this. By the way, when you get this out of the box, remember to pull the plastic tab out of here. It's very small, very simple. Doesn't have much of a charge to it in the Star Trek universe, but it still gets the job done. You can stick this in a pocket or down other article of clothing. The controls on this are very simple. To activate the targeting scanner, you rotate this dial here on the left side, and you get, unfortunately, this little dial here. While it's cool this thing flips up, there isn't any targeting information in there. However, if you look closely, you will see the holes for the speaker right there underneath the little targeting window there. So the force settings dial is over here, numbered 1 through 20, and this one actually has 4 settings on it. The first one is, well, the first setting is off, which means it won't work. The trigger is located down here, and it's just a little rubber button. The first setting is stun. And by the way, all of the sound effects here are really loud, so please forgive me if I put this down. It's more for my ears than it is for yours. The next setting is kill. The next setting is torch, which means you can burn things. And the last setting is vaporize, which wasn't used very often. So that is the Type 1 phaser. Oh, and by the way, getting the LR44 batteries out of this compartment is a pain in the ass. It's not just, you pull one side and all 3 batteries pop out. No, they're actually wedged between pieces of plastic that are molded in part of the design. So you have to stick a screwdriver or some shit in there, and it is impossible to get those batteries out of there. What most people, including some Trekkers, may not realize is that the Type 1 is actually an integral part of the standard Type 2 phaser. This is the weapon that you saw throughout the majority of the series, well, actually all of the series. This was used by landing parties, this was used by security personnel on the ship, this was even used on starbases and space stations. And if you'll notice, it's very function before form. It's a very practical design. Prop creator, what's his name, Hua Chang, I hope I'm not saying his name wrong, I probably am, received instructions from series creator Gene Roddenberry to make this look as little as a gun as possible. Now, yeah, it's held and fired, but the idea was to convey that it was futuristic. And really, one of the philosophies of Star Trek is you ask questions first and shoot later. And that kind of goes into the design of the Type 2 phaser in that, yeah, it's got a grip. You can hang on to the grip, but, you know, look at the little kind of stubby trigger. By the way, most of the props on the TV series didn't have the trigger there. It was just flush. So, most of them, not all. Some of the dummy ones I think had a little thing there. But anyways, this doesn't, you can hang on to it and, you know, it feels good enough, but it's not really a practical grip to have. It's all about that function before form, which Star Trek had. I mean, despite the crazy colors, the weird outfits, the obvious low budget, Star Trek, the original series, was very much about function before form. There's no real style to this weapon. Yeah, it's a ray gun, obviously, but it's not really about style. It's about function. And every single little thing you see on there has some function to it. So it's not just, you know, point and click and that's it. Well, actually, maybe it is. The Type 1 phaser contains the only batteries in the whole set. The Type 2 is practically useless when it comes to light and sound unless you have the Type 1 attached to it. And it accomplishes this, by the way, you do not push this pin in, you actually pull it out, which the instructions were not very clear on. Anyways, you'll notice there are those two little silver squares. Those are actually metal contact points. And you notice here the metal tabs right there come in contact with each other. So the electricity is transferred from the Type 1 into the Type 2. Anyways, the controls on the Type 1 are still fully functional, although when you pull the trigger, you don't press the button, you know, a little rubber button on the inside here. Instead, you pull the trigger down here. The targeting sensor is still functional, although typically it wasn't seen. Actually, it's a targeting sensor. Typically, that was not seen in the upward position, although, you know, there's nothing to say that you can't. The force settings dial still works. You have to use... I should bring it up now. One of the things I don't like about this dial is you have to use friction only to get it up and down. And for someone like me who is a little clammy on camera in front of thousands of people on the internet, it's a little difficult to get that up and down. Let's see, is that in the right position? See, dry off your hand. Nope, not enough. Okay. There we go. Okay, so you've got these settings up here. You can mess around with this. We'll deal with this in a moment. This up front here is the beam intensity setting. And it's this thing rotates like this. And you get... Now you notice there's an LED from the Type 1 is shining through here. Why it is that shines through there, I have no idea. You know, I actually like the kill sound. It's just more reasonable. That sounds like a phaser. Anyways, what this beam intensity setting does is, watch what happens when I twist this thing side to side. See how it gets real bright here, and it's real dim there. Here's the one thing I don't like about this phaser, actually. And I'm not certain if this is with all of the Diamond Select Toys TOS phasers or if it's just with the black handle. The problem that I have with it, and it may just be because it's faulty or something, is that LED in the Type 2 is not very bright at all. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go turn off the lights so you can see what this actually looks like in the dark. Okay, so with the lights off, you will get and I'm twisting that knob on the side at the same time. See how it gets brighter and darker? That's nice. Here's the weird thing, though. You can't see it, but I am removing the Type 1 from the Type 2. Here's the interesting thing. The Type 1 very bright. So it's very, very strange that the Type 1 is very clear, but the Type 2, the only way I can show it to you is to turn off the room's lights. It's kind of lame. Here's another reason why I think I've got a lame duck toy here, the replica. This beam light switch, you're supposed to be able to turn the LED in the Type 2 on and off using this, so that even though you'll still be getting your sound effects and light out of this, the light and sound will, or the light will not be coming out of here. Here it is in the on position, which means you can still see the light. Now I'm going to turn it off. Now watch what happens. See? No difference. It's kind of lame. And finally, the last setting that we have is the power settings, also known as the overload dial. I know that sounds awesome. This serves only one function. Turn it clockwise. Without sweaty fingers, I apologize. And then what you do is, the interesting thing about phasers is, even though they have a lot of power in them, if you don't treat them carefully, they can literally blow up in your face. And so what you can do is, in the show, set this to the higher setting, pull the trigger, and then blow it up in your face. And it'll keep doing that as long as that's turned. There's a little cheat to it, though. Okay, so since this is not functional without the Type 1, okay, so here are the electric tabs where the power is transferred between the battery and the Type 1 and the LED in the Type 2. Here's the button for the trigger, because it's just pushing up against the little rubber button. And then this, watch what happens, pushes up on that. This is for overload. So, if that's the case, then there must be something on the bottom of the Type 1. I knew these extra twist ties were good for something. I'm glad I saved them for all my Transformers toys. Hee hee. Okay. Tabs for the LED, rubber trigger, and then right here is the overload. So you can push this and overload your Type 1 phaser. But the instructions don't say that, of course. Contrary to what Hollywood may think, I happen to enjoy hard science fiction as much as I do the more fantasy-related stuff, which means that I also appreciate function over form designs, which means that this replica is just chocked full of goodies. I mean, 7 different independent features, including the trigger on both phaser units. That's just awesome. Of course, if it hadn't been for the lame LED and the switch here, I would have been just full of all kinds of praise. You know, this would just be great. I mean, 7 different features you can manipulate on this thing, not including just simply separating it. That's great. That's awesome. And you know what? I can kind of ignore the little switch on the side here. I can live without that. But why does that LED in the Type 2 have to be so dim compared to the one in the Type 1? And believe me, I've put fresh, brand new batteries. I got these batteries a couple of days ago and I haven't used it since. So they are literally fresh from the package. And the LED still doesn't work. So that's kind of lame. But even though it comes from Star Trek, the original series, hello, it just doesn't have that particular oomph in style to it. It's a little awkward. I mean, I'm sure the philosophy in designing this thing 50 years ago was make it as awkward as possible, make it as functional as possible, so that you don't want to be seen walking around holding this thing, even though it is quite the lethal little machine. But I don't know, maybe it got carried a little too far. Whatever it is, I guess it's just one of those things in Star Trek that I didn't care for as much. Yeah, I suppose one of the bigger things for me is that it's one weapon plugging into another, which to me is always, If done correctly, it works, but usually when it comes to a separating weapon, both halves fail. But usually when it comes to a functioning weapon, both halves are functional. I don't like how that tab sticks out, by the way. And why can't we push in on it? Why do we have to pull out? That's just ridiculous. So I don't like how the lower half is completely dependent on the upper half. But, hey, I guess that's just how it worked out in the late 1960s. I kind of wish that Diamond Select Toys and Art Asylum had put something like another LED or just some kind of little picture graphic something or other on that targeting scanner. And as I previously mentioned, it's really, really difficult to change that force settings dial over there. But I can't really disagree with the effort that was put into it. It really is a very good replica of the classic prop. It's just, I'm not as enthusiastic for the original series phaser than I am for some of the later designs. Oh, and by the way, it was purely coincidence that this happened today of all days. I wasn't really thinking about it when I said, oh, okay, I'm going to shoot the video for the phaser today, but look, Ma, I'm a red shirt. Hmm? Boom. Headshot. This is AV Unit 4A for CollectionDX. I'm signing off!